Okay, he's making me talk into a microphone today, and I hate this. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so for y'all that don't know me, I'm Julie Wells. Been with the office about 3 years. Primarily, I sell a lot of farm and ranch, and I don't know, there's some of you guys that I see that were here in the class last time. I think that farm and ranch, I think that term gets used a lot. And for the purposes of this class, we're gonna call it farm and ranch. What we're talking about is acreage properties, rural properties, things that are in the county that are not in a neighborhood. So what I consider farm and ranch, to me, if you go in a neighborhood, you've got a builder that's got 6, 8, 10 plans, you've got the same fishes, you can compare an apple to an apple. Agreed? Okay. So when you're working with rural properties, you're in the county, you're not typically in a neighborhood, and so trying to come up with values for those properties is a little bit difficult because you don't have something that you can fall back on and say, well, this one looks like this one. So this is my 7th year of real estate, and I have yet to see a property that looks like another. And so I think it's a pretty wide spectrum of things that we're dealing with. But before we get started, so I kind of, the last time that we taught this class, I get calls from a lot of you, and it's the same questions. I kind of tried to make a list of it. It's the same questions over and over, and it tends to be, how do I assign value to the things that I see on and I'm saying horse property. It could be horse property, it could be a cattle operation, it could be a hunting property, anything that's going to have some acreage that's going to fall outside of the neighborhood for the intents of this class. That's kind of what I'm talking about. And so I've got a slideshow that Kathy was nice enough to put up for me that's got some pictures of some of the things that trip everybody up. And in a minute I'll go through that. And then I've got some properties that I wanted to kind of go through and talk about, actually running comps, taking a property and how we, as a listing agent, how you're coming up with that value. As a buyer's agent, when you're going to write an offer on a property, how you're making certain that you're getting a good value for that piece of property that you're trying to buy. Before I start, what questions, what things do you guys want to cover today? What's on your mind? What are y'all hoping to achieve today? Because I want to make sure that I'm effective for y'all. Yes?
So I don't sell a lot of farm ranch and Cindy Giles. If someone called me and said, hey, do you sell farm and ranch? I'd probably say no, to be honest. But if it was like a past client or something, I really truly do not know what I should be worried about, right? Because in residential real estate, depending on the area, you're like, neighborhood is foundation mess everywhere. It used to be a farm, it used to be this, it used to be that. And if I go out to nowhere land, speaking just verbally, really,
Yeah, we live there.
what are the pitfalls? What do I need to be worried about? I know septic and wells and digging, and then how far you have to dig down to get to a water source, and how much water is shared with the around people. That was, Nolan Wisenhunt was super helpful to me when I was talking to him about a client that we never ended up doing anything with. But mostly it's just, we don't know what we don't know from residential to farm and ranch. And so I worry, am I even asking the right questions? Because who knows?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, and you're exactly right. It's what you don't know that's going to hurt you.
Exactly.
And I think, I want to answer this. So, I think it depends on what side you're on. So, as a listing agent, as a listing agent, you're going to get calls from past clients that maybe they've gone on and they've bought this acreage place, and it's got horse barns, and it's got land, it's got an arena, and it's got all this stuff, and you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of agents would tell you, do y'all do a lot of commercial in here? Does anybody do commercial? Anybody?
Done one.
Anybody?
We shouldn't. I'll tell you that right
Well,
now.
that's what I want to make sure.
Right.
Okay, so
That's true. Right.
I don't like commercial. I don't do commercial because I'm not comfortable with it. I don't know what I don't know, and same thing. I have a very good client that I've done 5, 6 transactions with, and he had a commercial transaction this week, and he's like, oh, just write the contract for me, it'll be easy. And I was like, nope, I really don't feel, no, it'll be fine. And so I did it against my better judgment, hated it. Like it was, and I because the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, what am I missing? What's gonna come back and bite me in the butt later? Like what am I not aware of? And so it's kind of the same thing. Like if you don't know, commercial for me, it's always gonna get referred.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna say this, because I have conversations with agents that will be very, and the commercial agents here in this office are very blunt about, if you ask for help on a commercial, you need to refer it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for learning.
Education, sure.
And you know, maybe for whatever reason, that's fine. On farm and ranch, like I think everybody can learn. I think that there are a lot of things about what I do that are just inherent. Like I got my first horse when I was 7. I went to college on a rodeo scholarship. I show cutting horses. My husband ropes. Like it's a lifestyle. Like it's something that we do every day. And there are things that, you know, we just built fence on our property, and so I know that pipe, you know, a stick of 2 7/8 pipe that I could buy for $30 last year is now $80. Like there's just stuff that you just kind of know. If you don't have that knowledge base, you've got to have the resources. Like you've got to have a fence person that you have a good relationship with, that you can call and go, hey, you know, because a fence is not a fence.
Right.
You know, a fence is a fence according to an appraiser, but it's not. When you've got a client, that's just spent, you know, $30,000 on a fence, and an appraiser comes in and gives it, you know, $5,000 value, you're gonna get a lot of pushback for that. And so I think that you have to have a network of people, whether it's the tradesmen, you know, barn builders, fence builders, another agent. You know, you said you always call. I don't mind. Like I would.
I know, and that's what I love about you. You just will answer
Well,
all of my questions if I don't.
I would rather you guys call than being here one day and hearing about how your E&O had to kick in because, you know, something fell through the cracks. Like I don't ever want you to feel like, you know, that you're bugging somebody. And if an agent makes you feel like that, shame on them. Because every single person at some point, we were all new, and we didn't come out knowing all this stuff, you know. And so if somebody asks you for help and you don't help them or don't try to share your knowledge, you know, everybody comes from a different place. I try to come from a place of contribution, and you know, I feel lucky that I have been exposed to a lot of things, and so I don't mind calling, or you guys calling, but to your point, have a, if you're gonna try to do farm and ranch, I think that the first couple of transactions, get somebody that can mentor you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get somebody that will walk through, you know, hey, can I write this contract up and send it over, we take a look at it, and you know, give them a synopsis of the.
Then you go, big red, dummy.
No, not necessarily, but I mean,
She
I
would
think that.
never do that.
You would never do that?
Never.
So what about, let's say, like let's do listing versus buyer tax. If you're the listing agent and someone calls out to list their farm property, I would be like, nope. But anyway, let's just say I did. What are the top 3 things I need to know about that house as far as like soil conditions or like any sort of like water stuff or runoff or environmental things?
So, I mean, that's a big net.
Okay.
It's a really big net, because again, farm and ranch,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess out of this office, there's probably maybe 1% of transactions that are true farm and ranch. And when I say farm ranch, it's a working horse ranch, a breeding facility, a cow-calf operation, a hunting facility, I mean, something that's actually farm and ranch. But that's not to say you're not gonna have a client that's got, you know, 25 acres and they've got a horse farm because their kid got into 4-H when they were 8, and then, you know, had to get a couple horses, and then they high school rodeoed, and then they went off to college, and they left all their stuff there. You're gonna get that kind of stuff, and so I think that understanding when you go into it, understanding what that place was used for. Is it a hobby farm? Was it something that was actually a working ranch at some point? Or is it just, I've had clients that have bought, they just wanted the acreage, and all of this other stuff was on the property, and they never used it. And so, and that's a whole other thing too, because then you've got a bunch of deferred maintenance to deal with. And so when you're looking at, you know, when you're looking at these things, you've got to know, is this actually still in good condition, or is it somebody's inheriting some problems? You mentioned about the soil. That's a very good thing to consider. As a listing agent, you want to know, well, buyer's agent, I think you're going to be more concerned. Listing agent, you can't do anything about it. You know, it is what it is. You can't, if it's got black land, or, you know, you're gonna market that property to the best of your ability based on what you're given. But I think you want to know, on the other side as a buyer's agent, you want to know, what are the people going to do with it? Again, hobby farm, are they actually show people? Are they actually doing something where they're maybe not necessarily making a living, but, you know, is it a serious hobby for them, that they are going to want to know that it's got really good sandy loam soil, that they've got, you know, it's got some kind of water supply on it, that it's got, you know, they've got cows, they need to have ponds, or they need to at least have a water well, or if it has co-op water, you know, if I'm gonna have an arena and I'm gonna try to water my arena with my co-op water, does that mean I'm gonna get a $800 bill next month? Like, all of those things are what's gonna be important to you depending on what side you're on. But as a listing agent, like, I think that you're still gonna handle it the same as if it's a residential listing, but you're gonna wanna know what the amenities are. And I'm gonna come back to that point in a minute, because I've got another, I have a listing packet that I brought, and I'm gonna go over that in a minute, so I'll come back to that in a second. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Julie, you touched on something that I'd love to hear you just briefly talk about. So could be one of two things. Maybe they buy raw land that's currently ag exempt. How do they carry that forward? Or they buy that quote hobby farm but don't plan to do anything with it, but it's currently ag exempt, and how do they hold that?
Okay. So two different questions there. So the first thing, do y'all know what an ag exemption is on the property? Does that make sense to everybody here? Does everybody got that? Okay, so if you're buying property, and every county is different, and you're gonna wanna know the counties, Ian and I were talking about, like, I stay in my lane, so to speak. Like, I work Wise County, Parker County, Montague County, a little bit of Jack County, a little bit of Hood County, a little bit of Erath County, and then I can go other areas that touch those, but I'm not necessarily, I don't feel like I'm the neighborhood expert in those other areas. And so you're gonna wanna know, for the counties that you're working, what's the minimum acreage requirement for an ag exemption? It's the first thing you're gonna wanna know. And then you're also gonna wanna know, are there any things specific to that county in order to keep an ag exemption? Because I just learned the other day, and you'll think this is interesting. So Montague County has a 10-acre minimum requirement for ag. So if you're gonna have a house if you're gonna buy a piece of land and you plan on building a house, you better be looking at 11 acres. Because if they're planning on building, they need 1 for the homestead, and then they need 10 remaining acres for their ag, right? So I had some people that, and this is kind of to your second part, I had some people who were, am I okay? I had some people who were, they wanted the land just because they wanted space. They didn't want neighbors, they didn't want people around, but they weren't really planning on doing anything to keep the ag exemption. They didn't want to cut hay on it, they didn't want to graze cattle, they didn't have anything, it was just an open field, there were no trees, so wildlife exemption really wasn't going to work because there was no shelter, there was no water. they will allow you to have an ag exemption if you have bees.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain number of hives that you can get, and it's not just, I'm gonna get me, a box of bees, and I'm gonna settle here, and great, they're gonna make, you have to actually do the work. You have to actually have a certain number of hives, and there's certain things that you have to do, but they were able to keep their ag exemption by getting, I think they have 3 hives, and they keep records and logs, and they come out and check, but you need to verify how much minimum acreage for each county, and, buyers are, I don't know how y'all's buyers are, mine are all over the place. One day they wanna be in Decatur, the next day they wanna be in Waxahachie, and, so you're kinda all over the place. And so you've gotta know, okay, wait, now I'm in this county. And so now maybe I'm looking at a 5-acre minimum, whereas before I was looking at 10. So you just need to know those numbers. As far as keeping an ag exemption, so if you buy a piece of property and it's already in ag, and let's say it already has a house on it, so if you buy, like, right now, we're gonna close on it today. Through the end of this year, your ag is already in place. It's gonna be prorated, you're good through the end of this year. January 1 until April 30th, you have that time frame to fill out, it's called a 1D1 application. You have to fill that form out and tell them what you're gonna do with that property, what previously was done on that property, and how you're gonna continue to keep the ag exemption in place, whether it's you're cutting hay off of it, or you're grazing cattle, or you have a wildlife exemption, or you have bees. And it's pretty specific. Wise County has gotten, I think they've gotten smart, because five years ago, there were a ton of people that had ag exemptions in place that they weren't doing anything with their land. And so, they've realized that people have gotten them. So now when you buy a property, you apply for that first year ag exemption, they're gonna deny you. The very first time, they're gonna deny you until they see some kind of production. So if you're cutting hay, they wanna see pictures of your first cutting, or they wanna see the hay on the ground. Or if you're gonna put cattle on it, Haitia's gonna drive up and she's gonna look and see your cattle, and then it gets granted. So you have to make sure what your people are gonna do with it, and make sure that they know that time frame. We send out at the end of the year, usually we try to do it around Christmas time, we send out 2 separate flyers that have the links for each county, wherever the client bought the property. It's time to file your homestead exemption, which all that's changed now because they've changed the timelines on stuff, but previously, we would send out the links, and we do it for the ag exemption too, and say, hey, you've gotta file your ag exemption, here's the form, spoon feed it to them, and then I send out another one in February. Because if that ag exemption falls off, that can be a significant impact on their taxes. And so, to the other part of your question, if you have clients that buy property and they don't want, and they have it in ag, and they don't want to do anything to keep it in ag, call me. Call me. I'm always looking for, if somebody wants to lease their land, and you don't, when I say lease your land, you do not make money. It's like $10 an acre is what the going rate is for good lease land. But you can get somebody to lease your land, and they will take over. Either they'll cut hay off of it, they'll graze cattle on it, you don't have to do anything to it, they pay for the fertilizer, they pay for all the expenses. There's all kinds of arrangements that you can make with different people, whether it's you split costs of the fertilizer and the equipment for or not the equipment, but the baling, and then they take half the hay, you take half the hay, or you can third it. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But if you've got clients that want to have property that's in ag and they don't want to do it, call me. I've got people that will lease it, and they'll keep that ag exemption in place. So, yes.
So the house we did in Lund,
Mm-hmm.
the owner bought the city and got 4 acres ag exempt, right, because I guess Blum wasn't allowing anything under 5, but he got it, so not fighting them. He told me that ag would stay exempt for 5 years. Is it a time frame in different counties too? Like,
So hang on. So when we
Or not,
were,
it was another house next to the lot you bought, right? So that he bought, because his parents owned the lot next to him.
so I think how he got his, so previously, and all this stuff has changed, but previously, if you had adjoining properties that were family, you could co-opt your land together. And so like you had 4 acres and your dad had 3 acres. And the minimum requirement was 5. You could co-opt that land together and they could qualify for an ag exemption. But then your guy decided to sell, and so it left the other one with 4.
It left the other side with 5, and the ones your buyers had was 9.
Yes,
But he was saying,
but he had a house that
He
was
had a house and a
homesteaded, so
barn.
4. Yeah.
well,
I
it's
mean-
really a barn, but that's what he called it.
Yeah.
But
I don't
but
know.
he said there was a time frame. I guess that's my question, you have to do an ag exemption every year?
No,
Based on,
once it's granted, you're good. So if you, like when you buy, like if you buy this year, January of the next year, you've got to do it. If you don't do it, it's gonna fall off. And I think there's like an 18-month window. If you let it fall off, and like say that first year you don't do it, and it does vary by county, but if you don't do it that first year, you forget, oh crap. And then the next year, you go back and you do your form. Sometimes they're polite and they'll give it back. Sometimes they're gonna make you wait. Sometimes they make you wait 2 years. It really all depends. So it's really, really important that you guys stay on top of your people. If you know they bought something that's in ag, make sure. And the other thing that I like about doing this, it's another touch point. It's another way for you, you close on a property in July, and then, everybody's at the closing table and they're happy and, yay. And then, life goes on and you forget about what you did yesterday. And you forget about that client. So with those ag exemption reminders, you can, hey, oh my gosh, Joe, it has been crazy. I cannot believe I haven't talked to you, but hey, I just wanted to tell you, we bought that property and we did such a good job on the price, but I want to make sure you keep your ag exemption, so here's the form, like you need to be sure, and they're gonna go, man, that Joe, he's all right. So, I think that you can kind of look for ways to be helpful and not, hit people over the head. You want to buy or sell a house, you can be helpful, but they're gonna remember that, you were of service to them, and the next time they need to do something, hopefully they go, oh, I'm gonna call Joe. So,
and
I
then,
think what happened on that deal, because that was Hill County,
yeah,
small county, like really, really small. I think that probably that fell through the cracks a little bit when that adjoining property sold. I think it fell through the cracks and maybe somebody didn't catch it. And so maybe he got his ag exemption for a little bit because he shouldn't have for 4 acres. I've seen that happen before. I've seen it in
well, this is the
Parker.
original seller. He actually fought him, and that's what he
And
told
they
me.
gave it back?
They never had one, because it was like a big property, I guess, that they had split up into, multiple 5-acre lots, basically, except that one that was 9. So they had some deed restrictions in there, it wasn't, so, because I think it was a big farm, like the one across the street from it, big ranch.
Yeah.
That somebody sold off, but I guess I was just wondering on time frame, like, so once your clients get that ag exemption that first year, it stays with them till they sell the house?
Till something changes on it. Till you change ownership, till you refinance and add, you get married and you add somebody to the deed, and there's a new deed that gets filed. Like something happens to trigger that account, it can change. So if you decide to, I'm gonna put my property in an LLC, that could be enough to trigger it to fall off too. So you want to, anytime you change anything on the deed, you want to make sure that exemption is still active. And you can call the appraisal district and ask them, and they'll tell you. But January 1st, when you apply, as long as it's granted, you should never have to apply for it again until you change something on that property.
So along that same note, you trigger the deed, so my clients up outside of Bowie and Gainesville, between there, they had raw land, then they built a home. It triggered a change in the deed, so they had to refile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, anytime you do anything to the land, like you've got to think about those things. And so especially with the ag exemptions, because that can be a significant savings on your taxes if that goes away. I have one, and I should have had to pay out of my pocket. Honestly, I should have had to pay out of my pocket. It was an honest mistake, and it was a learning mistake, but a really good friend of mine we bought 11 acres. And at the time that we bought it, it was raw land. It was in ag. Checked it, called the assessor, yep, and I've got notes in my file, yep, in ag, everything's good. So she closes on it. January rolls around, she fills out her 1D1 form, and come to find out, her 11 acres, if you tracked that property down, her 11 acres had only gotten put together as one parcel in that transaction that we were in. Previously, it was 2 parcels. One parcel was in ag, the other was not. And so she has 3 more years of half of her property being in ag and half of it not. And so she's paying full taxes on 5.5 acres. And, you know, I offered, I'm like, I feel horrible. And she's like, nope, you know, honest mistake. I feel really, you know, here I am telling you, like, I do these all the time. Like, I feel very comfortable with farm ranch stuff. Like, I did the things, I did the work. I missed it. So it can happen, and you know, thankfully she's a good friend and was like, it's okay, I'm gonna pay it, and she was able to, but I really should have. If she'd not been a friend, if she'd just been, you know, client and gets that tax bill for $5,200 or whatever, I should have probably had to pay that. So, anyway, so, anybody else? Nope. Okay, so, I'm going to, okay, I'm going to come back to, Cindy, I'm going to come back to your question. Hello. Okay, so, this is my husband Shane.
I'm like, just walking in here.
I just popped in.
Okay, so we live in Wise County, and we have about 15 acres. We bought our neighbor's place. He had 3.5 acres, touches our place. And I'm sorry, I just realized as I'm standing up here, I'm a talker with my hands. Like,
Okay, pardon me, Wise County, what city do you live in?
Boyd,
Okay.
where are you?
No, I'm not in Wise County, but when you say Wise County, my brain goes like, that's in the whole big, you know, like, I don't even know where that is, but if you say Boyd, I know where that is.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so we live in Boyd. And so when we bought that property, it's 3.5 acres. There was a little, like, our driveways are right beside each other, and there was a little frame house on the property that was a train wreck. And then at the back of the property, there was a metal building, just a metal building. And so we decided, we pushed the house down, and the metal building, we turned it into a barn dominium. And cleared the property, like, we have a folder, we know every quarter that we've put into that property. Clearing, dozer work, dirt work, concrete. I know every penny that we spent on the barn dominium. And when we first started it, it was, hey, we'll make that a barn dominium, we'll live in that, we'll push our house down, we'll build us a house, and then we'll rent that. Yeah, we'll do that. And so when we built the barn dominium, and I've got a point I'm going to try and make on this. So when we built the barn dominium, I hate that he's here now. So when we built the barn dominium, I went overboard. Like, we did luxury vinyl plank throughout. We did grade 3. We did grade 3 granite throughout. I have soft close drawers and cabinets everywhere in the house. My cabinet maker, everything's custom, like custom. We called him the ninja. Like, he's amazing, our cabinet guy. The barn dominium is 1,200 square feet. I spent $22,000 on cabinets. So, like, we spent a bunch of money on this thing, but we're gonna live there, right? So about 3 months into it, we start kind of tracking this thing forward, thinking, what are we gonna do with this thing when our house is finished? We're gonna have this thing sitting here. What are we gonna do? Oh, we'll rent it. Yeah, we'll do that. So we go forward, still spending money. Then I realize I don't want a rental next door to where I live. I don't want somebody knocking on my door at 2 in the morning, my toilet's not working. Landlord, come fix this, right? So I decided, okay, we're gonna cut off 2 acres and we're gonna sell the barn dominium. My problem is, so barn dominiums, as you know, they're hard to comp, right? Barn dominiums that you have spent $21,000 on cabinets and luxury vinyl plank and granite and spray foam insulation. This thing is a probably $205 a square foot. Like, it's nice. It's very, very nice. The land prices there are about $65,000 an acre. And so my point of this is, as a listing agent on every single property, whether it's farm and ranch or residential, but specifically on farm and ranch, because of the question that you asked a while ago about, you know, what do I need to know? What am I looking for? I think that the appraisals on specifically farm and ranch property, I think we either need specific appraisers that are trained
Yes.
on valuing, because it's like a pool. You know, you've got a client that spends $75,000 on a pool and they're gonna get $15,000 on appraisal. In a residential, you know, that stings. Same thing, when you come to a farm and ranch listing and you've got a client that's got a 150 by 300 clear span indoor arena that they've spent $350,000 putting up, and the appraiser shows up with, you know, penny loafers and he doesn't know. Yes, and I say that because it actually happened. It actually, we had an appraiser come on a 78-acre place, and he got out of the car, and I'm like, oh, we are dead. So anyway, I think that you as a listing agent, like, you've got to figure out how to not talk an appraiser into it, but like, you've got to fight for those valuations. And so I do a listing packet on every single property for the appraisers. And so, and I didn't bring copies. I should have thought about that. Today, if anybody wants a copy of what goes in this, give me your email address today and I can send this to you. But so we have branded folders. And so this one's actually happening tomorrow. And so once we get the appraisal done, if anybody wants to know, I'll let you know how it goes. But I put in here, hang on. Okay, so on one side of the folder, I just put the listing sheet with, you know, typical listing sheet. And then, I don't know if they need all this stuff or not, but I put a copy of the seller's disclosure, the on-site sewer, and then a copy of the survey. We just did a brand new survey on this property, and I wanted to make sure that he had a copy of that because I don't know if Title's even got it yet. But then, the other thing that I do is, I do this on every single listing. So, I will go room by room and I'll do a features and amenities list. And I do this two ways. I'll put it on the transaction desk, and so if an agent takes the time and actually looks at a property that they're gonna go look at and prints out seller's disclosure, on-site sewer, you know, prints all that stuff out, they're gonna have this. And so in my mind anyway, you know, you get to the house and you open the door, here's the house. If you've got this, you know, and they've got their clients, these are talking points. And so to me, and I don't know, I don't have any statistics, but to me, if an agent, if I'm a buyer and I'm with an agent all day and I'm looking at 7 houses, and that agent spends time talking through the house, telling me, not just reading off the listing sheet and not just, you know, walking through and going, oh, look, here's a drawer, and they actually have some selling points that I'm guiding them, I'm giving them, I feel like this is gonna stand out to a buyer. Same thing to the appraiser. Kind of the same thing. So I'm telling them, exactly what it's constructed of. And I will even, on this one and on the barn door, I'm actually telling values. Like I'm costing it, and I know that an appraiser, they have to use the comp, like I know that in my mind. But I think if you, because everything on that property is brand new fencing, metal building was there, but it's brand new concrete. Everything else inside is new, and we know what the cost is. I'm gonna tell him, we spent, X dollars on brand new pipe and top rail fencing with no climb and cedar stays, and brand new cedar stay entrance, and completely encapsulated spray foam insulation. Why is that important? Because it's gonna be energy efficient. Like, I will give him all of that. And so my thinking is, I'm gonna sway him, maybe I'm not gonna sway him, but I'm gonna give him all that I need to get him to think, wow, that's a really nice place. Not just, he's gonna walk in and go, oh, it's barnuminium. I wanna make sure that I do this. And then I also, especially since it's a barnuminium, not so much anymore. It used to be, they were hard to comp because there weren't, does everybody know what a barnuminium is, first off? Okay. My neighbor hates that phrase because she's like, it's not a barnuminium, it's a metal building. Like, barnuminium should have horse in it. Anyway, barnuminium sounds way better than metal building. But, so I think now they're more commonplace and so they're easier to comp. But on this one, I had to go wider than 5 miles. I had to go 10 miles. And so I've talked to several appraisers and I've talked to several of my lender people, and they're like, if you can't find it within 5 miles, yep, we're gonna go 10 miles, or in the alternative, they will let them go back a longer time frame. They don't like that. So if you can find it within 10 miles, then they will. And so I've actually printed out all of the comps that I've used for my valuation, and I went a step further, and I wrote on here, you can see the structures on this bundle, but then I actually did land comps too, because this, to me, again, this is 2 acres, it's not in a subdivision, there's no HOA, you're in the county, so I think that's got some inherent value in and of itself, because you're not gonna be tied down to, having an HOA telling you when you gotta mow your grass, and so I want him to know that even though we're in Boyd, Texas, it's $65,000 an acre for 2 acre lots right now. And so I do these on every listing, but I spend a lot of extra time on farm and ranch listings, because I think that you have to, like, you've got to get the appraisers, you've got to get their mind thinking about value. And that's kind of the only way that I've done it, or been able to get it done. So.
Julie, I think with what you do there, the other thing it does for the appraiser, if they're somewhat cooperative, it gives them additional information to help them support the value they assign if they want to assign a little higher value than the comps have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. So, yes, ma'am.
I have 3 questions.
Okay,
2 are short.
that's okay.
Okay, so that sheet that you have for the appraiser, do you also give that to the inspector?
Do not give it to the inspector, no.
Okay. Number 2.
They're talking about the amenities list?
Right, just to kind of like,
No.
I don't know, okay. So the second question is on your property that you're splitting off,
Mhm.
do you share water property, like a well with them,
Mhm.
or
So
you got city
we have co-op water out there.
water?
So
Okay,
it's Walnut Creek, it's kind of like city water.
yeah,
They have their own tap in.
okay.
And I'm trying to think about how I want to answer that question. I don't know that you would ever have an instance where, Joe, you may be better to answer on this. I don't know that you would ever have an instance where you would want to share a well
No.
with anybody. And I don't think a lender would allow that anyway.
Meredith just bought one that had a shared well and they had to do something. What did Meredith do?
She had to get it, like, they had to get their own, the people had to get their own. So you wanna, like, you're gonna have to have your own water source.
Right.
And I think too, I'm glad y'all are all here, and I'm glad that you asked that too. I think that, with, especially, again, I work Wise County, Parker County, so we're the northwest corridor. We're predicted to be the next Keller South Lake. And like just the last what we've seen in the last 5 years, like it's coming. The growth is, like, it's happening. And so I've been hearing for several years, Parker County, specifically around Millsap, they're having problems with water. You're hearing stories of people digging wells and having them, immediately go dry. We have 2 aquifers up in Wise County and in Parker County. The more people that get on this, like, I think it's gonna continue to be an issue. I'm telling all of my clients, and then again, this is something that Joe's a good guy. This is something else that you guys can do too. If you've got property and you don't have a well, I'm encouraging everybody, get on a waiting list, dig a well, because I think that in the next, at least the next 10 years and possibly the next 5, I think that water is gonna become a serious issue in our area. I think that water wells are gonna become metered. If you've already got a well, you'll be grandfathered in, so you won't have that metering. But I think that would be a good, maybe a good touch point to talk about. There's I can give you all the information, but there's actually a group that does some studies on the water quality and what's going on with the aquifers in our area. And you can send out to your database and, hey, you might want to consider getting a well. So I think she's got
Now,
one
one
more.
more quick question. So there was a property, and I think it was Montague County. And it was fairly new listing. I don't know if it's still on there, but I was asking another agent about it. Big property and everything. They said it was a manufactured home. Looked like they'd redone it all and everything. And then in the paperwork, there was a deed on there, and it said that if you purchase this land, there are all sorts of restrictions, and one is that you can't have a manufactured home. And then another agent said, oh, well, it's Montague, Wise County, unless your neighbors complain, nobody's gonna sue you or anything. Is that still true?
When it's a true statement, it doesn't mean that, so what that means is they don't live in an HOA, so there's no governing body to enforce those deed restrictions. We have deed restrictions on the 2 acres that we're selling. We're putting in, no mobile homes, I can't remember what all we did.
But you gotta do mobile homes and manufactured homes. They're different wording.
Yeah, this one said
Basically the same
manufactured.
thing.
Yeah, it's
But,
manufactured.
For instance, right down the road from us, that are deed restricted. A lady brought in a manufactured home, or like one of those portable buildings, basically. Gonna let her sister live in it, right? Got it all set up. The neighbor threw a fit. Made them move. So your person, whoever buys this mobile home, sets it up, spends all this money.
Yeah.
5 years from now, your neighbor bitches about it, they gotta move it
Yeah,
because it's deed restricted. So now they're losing all their money.
right,
So if they wanna gamble that, then
yeah. I was like, oh, but the paperwork in here says.
But so
no
that's
manufactured
basically how it
home.
works. I mean,
Does it matter if it's on a foundation or not? Cause I mean, like I know they're building these houses in factories now that are actually legitimately,
If
Like,
it comes
if it's a
with
manufactured home, it says no manufactured home.
Yeah, if it comes with a certificate and a VIN number and a serial number, and then it's still a manufactured or a modular or some kind of something that would be
Yeah, it has a certificate.
in that gray area.
But it's how it's worded, cause like, there's a place that we sold across the street said no mobile homes. Well, they could put a manufactured home.
it's like buy a 2-story building from Home Depot, that's a shed that
Yes.
people are putting on properties now.
So
So
that,
it's just how
that,
it's worded.
and how that happened, what he's talking about, so there's an agent in our area that we were the buyer's agents on that property. And the woman that was selling it was like, I don't want any mobile homes, I want no mobile homes. And so the agent was didn't want to have an attorney And so she wrote up the deed restrictions that everybody signed off on and wrote it, no mobile homes. And so my client was like, didn't say anything about a modular home. I can put a modular home on it.
Cause it doesn't have wheels.
Yeah.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong. So if you're having clients, that would be, yes, that's a true statement, because it's in there, it's attached to the property. If it says no, they're gonna have to go get an attorney, and they're gonna have to go, file some kind of paperwork, something's gonna have to happen, that yes, it is enforceable. But if you've got property that you're selling and you wanna put deed restrictions in it, have an attorney write it up so that it's actually like written right and it's got teeth and it can actually be enforced, and they can think of all the ways that manufactured home, modular home, Home Depot, shed, whatever. So, yeah, good point, yes.
Yes, about the wells,
Mhm.
then you can build a well everywhere, or no?
What do you mean everywhere?
Like, I live in Southway, can I ask for, they allow
There's
me?
acreage requirements, so it's gonna depend on the county, but there's gonna be acreage requirements. If you have a septic, you're gonna have 2 acre minimum for a well and a septic. Most counties are gonna be 2 acre minimum, so if you've got 2 acres,
Yeah.
then you could dig a well. If you've got 1 acre and
But
you
I don't
have,
have septic because it's from the city,
if you're in the city, you're probably not gonna be able to, I suspect.
Many houses in the neighborhood has well already, but I
Were
think
they
it's grandfathered,
previous?
maybe
Yeah,
it's
they're previous.
many years ago.
Yeah, they're probably previously there. The only way around that is if you have co-op water, like our Warrendo. We have co-op water, if we were,
We actually sold 2 acres so they could
Yes.
dig a well.
we originally were gonna do less, but we thought, if they wanna ever dig a well, so we cut it and made it 2 acres. That way they could have a well and a septic. So,
Unless you're in Haslett, and then you can do it on an acre.
you can on an acre?
Well, we're acre lots in Lonesome Dove, and we have septic and wells.
On 1 acre, yes, so see, it varies by the county. So I know my county
It's in
is
Tarrant
2,
County.
yeah.
Tarrant County, but no city.
Okay.
But it's also, way back from the 80s when, or was it the 90s when they were built.
Yeah, I think Meredith's parents' neighborhood was like that too.
But there you go, that goes back to what we're trying to get people to do now, if you dig wells, because you're grandfathered in.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you might not be able to do it now, but you could back in the 80s.
Right.
True. Okay, any other questions?
You mentioned about the co-op water, that and you see that it could be metered in the future. So like, how are you advising your buyers of that potential risk of?
So on water wells, I think that I think it's my opinion. I think that because of the influx of people that we're getting here, I think that if you look at, okay, so Tarrant County, has anybody seen this? I had a client get a notification for mineral rights taxes that they were trying to collect on mineral rights that the clients owned. Has anybody seen this?
We had one in our office.
Okay, so I've never seen one before, but I had a client send me and say, what the heck is this? And basically, they live in a neighborhood, but they own some portion of the mineral rights. They get like a $14 check a year for their royalties, and Tarrant County is trying to collect their portion of the taxes that are owed on that $14, right? And so my opinion is, at some point, with all of these people coming in and digging wells and using the water, natural resource, they're gonna go, hey, we should get paid for this. And so I just think that they're gonna, at some point, they're gonna start metering it. And so we've been telling all of our clients that have acreage and that meet the requirements for the acreage, you might wanna consider digging a well. And, here's some contractors that dig in your area.
I think they're trying to do it in other states too, so.
Do you have any idea on average what it costs to dig a well?
It's gonna depend on where you live, how deep they have to go, how rocky it is, if you wanna go to the Trinity or to the Fluxy, like there's a whole slew of requirements there. So I would say, depending on where you live, contact a well service company in that area and they can tell you.
Okay, yeah, I just wrote an offer yesterday on a 2-acre lot in Saddle Crest Estates in Weatherford. But
Yeah, so depending on how rocky it is, it can vary anywhere from Weatherford in general, anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 is kind of the numbers that I've heard, but I would call a well company.
Don't you also have to check to see whether or not there's an aquifer that runs that area? I mean, isn't there an aquifer map that you would have to take a look at first?
I don't know that you would have to take, I mean, there's aquifers, so like Jack County, you can't hit water in many places in Jack County. So same kind of thing there. The well service company would be another resource to let you know, hey, I'm looking at this property that's at 123 Banana Street in Jacksboro. Is there a problem with the water there? And they're gonna go, you should go to Parker County. So again, talking about the resources, like if you're not familiar with an area, being able to call on those people and ask their opinion, it's invaluable. We've got a good network of fence builders. I think you came in late, but we were talking about having fence builders, just different people that you can call on when you run into things that you don't know, and that would be a really good one. So.
Would you address about the mineral right, I mean, like, a little bit, like, everyone, a lot of them don't even know that they can ask for that or whatever, and so, I mean, would you, like, for the acreage?
For
like-
minerals?
Yes, so if the sellers don't wanna give up their mineral rights, and your buyers are like, well, I don't wanna buy it if they're, how do you,
So,
like, for these acre
Uh-huh.
lots?
so in about 230 transactions, I've had 4 transactions where the minerals were up for grabs. Most people don't own their minerals, they've been sold generation, like years and years, like our great-great-grandparents sold them. So most people don't own their minerals, most of the time. That's another good point. So I always print out the mineral addendum with listing packet. I always print that out at my initial meeting with clients. Do you own your minerals? And they will say, no. I write a line through it, and I have husband and wife initial. And I'll tell you why I did that. Because I did the same thing, got to a closing, and the wife said, hey, what do we do about our mineral rights? And, excuse me?
Right.
Oh, we get a check like twice a year. And I'm, flip over and I'm like, remember this conversation? I kind of forgot. So that deal, like, we had to stop, we had to get up from the closing table. I had to go call the buyer's agent and go, hey, so this is what's happened. Do your people want to go forward? Because, do you remember, did they keep them?
It was Mitzi's.
Well, that happened with them, but that also happened with Meredith's parents.
Both relatives.
So both family. Refer your family. Like when family decides to sell, refer your family. The one I'm talking about is Meredith's parents.
I don't remember.
Because Mitzi and Jimmy kept theirs. I forgot about them. So it ended up, it was several hours, trying to decide, do we keep them, do we not? And it was only a couple $100 a year. It was not, something that should have stopped a deal, but it could, because what if it's several $1,000s? I'm never going to advise on mineral rights. Like, there's no way for us to look at a property or anything online and know, or look at a deed and know, oh yeah, they probably do. That's gonna be something, if somebody wants to know about the mineral rights, you need to get them in touch with an attorney. And they're gonna have to research it. An oil and gas attorney, a land man, they've been sold and then they've been split and then somebody's died and they've inherited a piece and they are so convoluted and hard to track down that most of the time people don't know or they forget. And so minerals are typically not something that you spend a lot of time with, but you gotta be mindful and make sure that you're, having the conversation, covering yourself that, hey, I asked you about this, you don't have any, so that if it does come up at the closing table, hey, what about that check we get? That you're not left holding back.
So if they would be getting something, not always though, right? Or they.
If it's in production, they'll get some kind of, if it's in production, they're gonna get some kind of royalty check, but if it's a shut-in, they may not be actively producing anything, and so there may not be any money. And if you do not, as the listing agent, if they have minerals and you do not retain them, it's gonna pass to the buyer. And if your seller's intention was to keep those minerals and you did not retain them, it's gonna pass to the buyer, and that's gonna fall on you. So I have a true story. I have a buyer who now gets a nice little mineral check every 3 months, because in the listing agreement, or on the listing sheet, on exclusions, the only thing it said was minerals. It's how she excluded them. I saw that, didn't pay any attention to it. Got down to the closing table, there was not a mineral addendum with the contract. Got down to the closing table, there was nothing in the deed, and I'm like, my client gets a mineral check every month now, because that agent excluded her client's minerals by putting it in the exclusions note. That's not how you exclude them. I don't know what happened with, I don't know what happened with that seller and that agent, but, that could be, you could get a commission-ectomy if that happens. So don't do that. Yes.
I had something, and this isn't farm and ranch, but it's still minerals, though. I was shocked. I just sold this tiny little home in Arlington. It was on a 1/5 of an acre, and the two sisters, their mom had passed. And the mom was getting about $100 every few months in royalties on that. And so they had the paperwork. They wanted it to convey with the property. And I learned something new on that transaction. So, I put it on the, we corrected it on the 1 to 4 family, and we did all that. So the buyer's agent's like, how do we switch this into the buyer's name? And I'm like, that's a really good question. So I'm like, Matt Schultz. And Matt was like, they just contacted the company after closing to get those royalties switched into their name. That is 11 and a half years. That is the first time that I've ever had that happen, where that actually conveyed and someone was actually getting some money.
I had somebody recently that the minerals were excluded in Mansfield, and they said, yes, they get a check every month.
Yeah.
So that's why they.
It's a little 1/5 of an acre in this little neighborhood. Home was built in 1985, and
That's the way this one was.
it was interesting.
Yeah.
So it's gonna get, in some ways, a little more clear, but also a little harder, because just this week, the broker lawyer committee approved some changes to the contract for Farm and Ranch, and it includes the seller's responsibility to deliver the lease documents to the buyer.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, they had already done that on residential.
I was gonna say, on the residential, we had to check and provide that before we executed a contract.
Right.
But you know what's gonna happen on that, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have people that don't know how to,
They're gonna say,
what is
I
that?
don't have a lease.
What is that? How would I'm just gonna skip that section.
Yeah, well, that's why I said, it makes it more clear, but it makes it harder too.
They should be in our office, then they'll know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so I'm going to attempt to, Kathy made me a slideshow. How are you doing?
She's got it open for you.
Yeah, it's on the bottom. Yeah, I was gonna look through here first, so,
I think being
No, that's.
Oh, different, yeah, coffee.
Oh, no.
I always get good nuggets from all the classes. I'm like, I know
Like set up
everything
like
that happens.
forms that you
That's
can
one
share,
thing.
like all the forms you need.
Like your listing documents?
Yeah, like
Is
some
that-
different for a farm and ranch compared to
So,
a residential.
So there is a farm and ranch listing agreement. I still use the residential one a lot. And because again, going back to the farm and ranch, like there's very few properties that even we list that are actually, working ranches or cow-calf or, mostly it's gonna be a house with a barn, with an arena. And so I still use a residential a lot, but then I will have a separate note page and write down, kind of like I do on a house, the amenities list. And we'll do, like on a barn, we'll go into a barn and we'll do, okay, it's got 12 by 12 stalls and the barn is constructed out of, 2 by 2 square tubing and it's spray foam insulated and they have an automatic flush system and they have automatic waters and like we'll get all the same amenities and features. But for me to be able to process it and understand what it is and what's there and how I'm gonna market it, that works better for me to retain it and to understand it and to know it. The farm and ranch listing agreement to me is more, they're like they got your chutes and your gates and they have a lot of stuff in there that really is more specific to an actual working ranch, and it very rarely does that come into play.
And we can't sell it anyway, so.
What's that?
You can't sell it then. You can't sell that much land anyway. Are we restricted to 9.99 or whatever? I thought that's what Russ said, that we were limited.
Well, Russ might have said that, but you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can sell as much as you
Great.
want.
What I would guess is Russ might have been saying, and Julie will agree with this, if it's more than that or even more than 5, for example, and you're not comfortable with it, you should be referring it.
Okay.
Well, or at the very least, like I said at the beginning,
A
a mentor,
mentor, yeah.
like get somebody to go alongside you until you're comfortable. Just
Yeah.
like if I ever decided to do a commercial transaction, I should do the same thing. I'm not gonna do commercial. Okay, so I get calls from a lot of you guys over and over and over, and it's the things that are on the property that are gonna add value. And so some of these are, if it's okay, I'm gonna come out here. So some of these are actually active listings, and when we go in and look at a property, I think that there's such a great difference between, it's kind of like a fence. A fence is a fence is a fence, except it's not. A barn can be like this, or it can be like this. So if you look at the difference, like this is it's got a concrete alley, the stalls, the dividing line between the stalls, you've got the tongue and groove boards that go all the way up so the horses can't get to each other. You've got this nice grading that's open, so that's gonna be really, really well ventilated. You can tell this barn's got electricity. They've got some runs off of the back. So I mean, it's a really nice barn. So like on value, in my mind, this is gonna get a good amount of value. Whereas this is gonna provide shelter, and somebody did the best that they could. In my mind, this is not gonna get a lot of value. So, looking at, when you're going in and looking at these properties, and you're gonna see this a lot. You're gonna go to somebody's place and, they didn't have a lot of money, they didn't have a lot of time, but they needed a place for, their kids' pony or their horse or whatever. And so, this one is safe and it's well constructed, but it's very small stalls, very small openings. I don't see any electricity. I don't see any insulation, it's all wood construction. And so in my mind, you know, if this is a barn and it's got, you know, 4 stalls, I'm gonna assume there's no concrete alley, there's not gonna be a whole lot of value on this. And so when you're looking at, Cindy, when you go on a property and you're looking, you know, you wanna be taking a mental note of what's there, what it's constructed of, how it's constructed, how it's gonna be used. And I'm gonna click through all these, and I think some of this will kind of give you guys a good idea. Again, kind of the same thing. This is a nice, very nice built barn. They've got it open. Can't see the inside of it, obviously, but you can tell that the runs off of the back of the stalls. They've got wood dividers in between, so the horses can't get to one another. Obviously, it's our panel, which is the metal that's on the building. You can see the fence that's coming off of the barn is pipe. So probably the rest of this place has got decent fences on it, so it's probably gonna get some good value. This is an active listing right now. This one was here last time, Joe. We talked about this one, but this one, so there's not gonna be a lot of value on this. So this ceiling is plywood. It's got electricity down, you know, it's got lights up. But if you see the front of the stalls where the horses are gonna go, that's actually portable panels. So that's an aluminum panel that you could go and unpin and take it down and move it. So it's not permanent. There's nothing permanent about anything that's inside this building. And so just kind of walking through, it's clean, it's really, really clean, but it looks to me, and it could be the picture, but it looks to me like it's pretty low roof. So, gonna be hot, probably not very well ventilated. But for value, I'm probably not gonna assign it a whole lot of value. Same as this.
Julie, can I ask a question?
Yes.
When you say on the last slide, you're not gonna give it much value, how much value are you going to give it?
So from this picture, that would be hard to, it'd be
But
hard.
it's your listing, right?
No, this is an active, it's an
Oh,
active, it's
okay.
not mine,
Okay,
it's
okay.
an active listing. Without seeing the whole thing,
Yeah.
I can't, I
Okay.
really can't, there's a couple of pictures in here that I think I get the whole barn, and I could probably give you
I'm just
good
curious,
idea.
cause like, what you may think is not much value, I may think is a lot, so.
Yeah, I mean, so if I was guessing, I would bet that this barn maybe 5 to 7,500.
Now, that's,
Shane, what do you
that's
think?
about what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's just people think that, to me, when people think they have a horse property and the horse property down the street sold for $1 million and they think theirs should be $1 million because it has a barn. Well, the other barn you saw and that barn are two different.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that barn, the other one costs probably, you know, 50, 60, 70,000 to build, where this one costs 5 or 6,000 to build. So you have to, is what she's trying to do. It has value, it just doesn't have.
Right, I was just curious as to.
It's kind of like a
how
shop.
much.
You can look at a shop and tell that, hey, this one's really, really nice, and you look at this one, and it's the same thing with a horse barn. You just have to.
Does it help if they have
Let me see.
receipts?
I mean, that can be helpful if it's recent. You know, if they built it 20 years ago, probably not as helpful. If they built it recently, yes. She asked if it was helpful if they had receipts. If it's something like our barn dough, where I've got every receipt for, you know, the last 6 months, yes. But, you know, something this age is probably not, a receipt's probably not gonna be very helpful.
But a barn, a shop, a pool, an appraiser's not going to give you dollar for dollar.
No,
They're just not.
no.
You make your money on your house. You're lucky if you get 50 cents on the dollar. Really and truly.
Yeah.
It's sad, and the fences are the worst. A pipe fence, a person can have $100,000 worth of pipe fence, and it's a fence to an appraiser. And you gotta talk them into allowing more money for it. And that's where her list really comes in handy, because you can spend $15,000 doing fence in a place, or you can spend $100,000.
You're gonna see this a lot on places. That, you're gonna get about $1,000 worth of value. Like that.
Oh, I figured they'd take value away.
Yeah,
take value away.
there's not much value there. But you're gonna see this a lot, you know, I think that oh, you know, it's a horse place, and, you know, the flip of this is, you get a client that calls you to list their place, and they say that, you know, I've got a state-of-the-art horse facility, and, you know, it's really nice, and I expect top dollar, and they've got this, you know, you're gonna have to give them some tough love, and explain to them, you know, this is why it's not gonna get much value on an appraisal. So, kind of more of the same stuff. Same thing. So talking about construction, like what I'm looking for when I go in is the rafters, is it, like this is wood? Is it wood? Is it pipe? Is it square tubing? You know, does it have concrete alleys? Is there electricity? Is the electricity extension cords? You know, is it actual, I've actually got electricity in the barn, or we just have strung some extension cords around. You know, that's the kind of stuff you need to be looking at and taking note of.
You see this a lot, like older barns
Mhm.
that are relatively not, I mean, somebody built that in relatively nice 50 years ago with, you know, and they still could use it. It's just not, there's just not much value in it.
Oh, no. It's dangerous to go in.
Well, I mean, well, that one, they can still be built pretty good. They can still be built pretty good. And taken care of if they're upkept. I mean, if they're kept decent or taken care of, but then
Yeah.
they're just not worth it.
Oh, my.
Those tires.
Yeah.
They are holding the wind.
So, I mean, same thing, you're gonna see a lot of this kind of stuff, and, you know, again, it's just, it's the same thing as looking at a house that's got, you know, builder grade finish outs versus, high-end finish outs. You just wanna take note of how it's constructed, what it's got in it. This picture I wanted to put in here, so these are nice pipe traps, turnouts. The perimeter fencing is pipe, and then they've got these loafing sheds. Good luck. They've got these loafing sheds, in the pasture. They provide shelter with the roof, but they've got the space at the top. They're ventilated well. These are very well built, very well thought out, very safe. Same kind of thing. This is a very well, see the red I-beam in the rafters? Like that is a very, very well constructed. You're not gonna blow this one down very easily. This one, again, not gonna get a whole lot of value. They did a good job. Like, it's made well. You've got sliding stall fronts to the doors that go into the stall. They're on a track, they slide back and forth like they're nice. It's got a high pitch, so it's pretty well ventilated, I think, but no concrete alley, you know, wood framed. So just not a whole lot of value, but this is nicer than most of the other ones that we've looked at. That's the other angle of the same barn. It's a different type. This is more of a loafing shed style barn. It's more open. You know, here in Texas, it's hotter than it is cold, and so you'll see a lot of this where you don't have barns that are closed in, and they've got runs off the front of them where the horses can get out of the stalls and move around. But this is very well constructed. I don't know why this is in here. It's a walker, if anybody's wondering. It's an automatic horse walker that you put them in and turn it on. It's got a program, and it'll make them exercise it's a horse's treadmill, basically.
The last class you had that really bad one.
Mhm.
The last class you had that really bad one, I think that's.
Again, so I-beam construction, electricity, they don't have concrete alleyway, but it's a nice barn, very well ventilated. That's kind of the same shot of that other barn we just looked at. A little different style. This is big traps. They obviously don't want their horses grazing. They've got them in dry lots where there's no grass, but they've got these loafing shed covers at the back for shelter. You know, that would, in my mind, that's kind of a nice thing, but an appraiser's gonna look at this and, you know, you're not gonna get, like Shane said, you're not gonna get dollar for dollar. So when you see stuff like this, if you're listing it, like, you're gonna have to figure out either how to get the appraiser to look at this from a practical standpoint of, you know, here's the good things, here's what replacement cost is on it today. And if your client has, if they have this nice of a horse facility, 9 times out of 10, they've got a really nice house too, and they've got really nice land. And so how I will approach comps on those is, I'm gonna err on the higher side of everything to try to get the most value for my clients, because this is a nice property. And you hope that by providing the comp data that supports higher price point on everything, that it's gonna make up, because you're not gonna get what it costs to build this.
So Julie, like on that one, the previous one, for your list for the appraiser, would you consider maybe measuring how long those fences are and give the appraiser an approximate cost to replace that today?
Exactly.
Type, no climb fence?
Exactly. Yeah, this one, so this is an active listing. That is actually, it's 50 by 125, I think is what they said. And it's pipe and cable, I think.
Oh, it's cable?
I think it's cable. It doesn't look like
It
cable.
looks like the outside is.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell about the middle.
Yeah, so they gave the measurements, but yeah, exactly what he's saying. Like, I would look at the materials and take the dimensions, call your person that does fence building and find out, you know, hey, if I wanted to build, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of these traps, and you've got these shelters splitting 2, you know, so each one's got shelter. If I wanted to build this today, here's, you know, I would draw him a diagram and, you know, send it to him and get a bid for it. And then when you have your listing and have your amenities list, tell your appraiser, you know, if a tornado was to come through here tomorrow and knock this down, this is replacement costing us today. Sometimes it works, sometimes you can get the appraisers on board, sometimes it doesn't, but
You did your job.
everything that you can do to, you know, prove up your value, it's gonna benefit your client. Now, on the flip side, when you're a buyer's agent, same thing, you wanna know that, okay, if the clients are asking, you know, X dollars for this place, where's it coming from? And if you can justify your value in the finish outs, great. If it's a situation where I have a listing right now that is, the house is 27 years old, it has original carpeting, it has Formica counters, it has linoleum floors, it is 7.24 acres, it has a barn that looks like, no, that's too nice. It has a barn that looks worse than this. And when I ran my comps, I told them that their place was gonna appraise for between 400 and 415,000. We've been on market for 97 days at 550,000. We've had 4 showings. And so, but when we listed, part of my, you know, here's what I think, and they said we want to list at 550, I was very upfront, you know, do you know, this is based on, you know, I don't set the prices, the data. I have to look at the data. This is what the data's showing me. And so, you know, you're gonna know in the first week. We're 98 days in. Every week when I call them this week. Well, you haven't had any showings, and this is why probably, you know, do y'all wanna make an adjustment? Nope, okay. Market has shifted, do y'all wanna make an adjustment? Nope. So if you get a client that is, you know, still kinda hung on February, and can price our place however we want to, you know, and you've given them a price that's significantly lower, you know, you need to be vocal and, hey, you know, here's what I think, and you need to make sure that it's not about hurting people's feelings, it's not about, you know, trying to be their friend, like, you need to step up and, what's that?
Be the professional.
Exactly, yeah, because, you know, 98 days in, had I not had that conversation at the front, right now, I would probably be embarrassed to call them. But, you know, every week when I call them, I hope that, you know, today's the day that they go, yes, let's drop the price. Hasn't happened yet. They haven't reached their pain point yet. So, talking to your question about value, I thought I had a picture that showed. Oh no, I'm missing a picture. So Kim, I can email you some actual completed barns where you can see the whole thing. And anybody else that would want that, I can send you some pictures that would show you the whole, like this barn, I know this barn. This is a 5-stall. It is 12 by 24 on the horse stalls. They've got a 14-foot center alleyway. That open space on the left side, that's just a place where they park their tractor. It doesn't go all the way through. On the other end, they have a separate tack room and feed room. They have a concrete center alleyway. They have electricity. That barn is spray foam insulated. And
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
You've mentioned that concrete,
Mhm.
what is the benefit of that?
So, a couple things. One, it's easier to keep it clean because you can come through with a water hose and wash everything out.
Okay.
Two, you're gonna keep the dust down, and so for like horses, if you've got performance horses like breathing, just like you, breathing
Yes.
dust, it's not good for you. Like, that's
Okay.
why I sound like this today. Breathing dust, not good for you, so the concrete's gonna cut down on the dust.
Okay,
Um,
makes sense.
that exact barn today with the, exactly how you see it, replacement cost on that today is gonna be probably 85, 90,000,
Oh, wow.
so.
Do you get a lot of contingent offers when someone has to sell their house when you're selling a piece of land? Or is
Um,
this
So lately,
since we've shifted?
yeah, since the shift, I think everybody's probably seeing more contingencies. Are you guys?
Yeah.
I've actually gotten a couple under contract with contingencies where before you didn't get laughed at. I think the shift, I personally think the shift is good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of happy about it. I think that, the last year has been, but I think that what I'm having to do with every listing appointment that I go on is, educate, and teach sellers that, things are different, and, you cannot be greedy, and you have to look at the data. Like, we're not getting 12 and 15 and 20 and, appraisal waivers and all of that stuff. So I think that contingencies are gonna come back in, and we're already kind of seeing it.
Who do you use for your loan officer?
Say it again.
Loan officer, do you have someone out there?
For farm and ranch.
Or-
Several, yeah, I mean, there's several. I do a lot of stuff with First United Bank. Jonathan Alexander, I like First United because they keep their stuff in-house. They're not trying to prepackage them to resell them, and so they can be a little bit more flexible.
Can you send us an email with that contact information? Also, if you have vendors, because we don't know.
Mhm.
And then people
So-
ask for referrals and we don't know.
Yes, so everybody, my email address, when we leave here, if y'all wanna shoot me a message, my email address is just, my name is Julie Wells, 922@gmail. And if y'all wanna shoot me a message about lender contacts, if y'all want any of the info that's in the listing packet, anything that we covered today, any questions or whatever, that's how to get me. Happy to share that. And I was gonna say something else, and now it has gone out of my head. So, is there anything else that I feel like there's so much more stuff that, like, when they ask me to do the class, I'm like, yes, but I think you could do like 80 of these because there's so much stuff that you just don't cover. So we'll
I do
try.
have a quick
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
So, this listing in Boyd, it was a bigger piece of land, and they chunked it to sell it.
Mhm.
And so, it was like 2.2 acres here, 2.2 acres here, all this. So, fast forward, it was ag exempt, then it becomes non-ag exempt, and they just found out that they now have back taxes on this property. Rollback taxes, and that they can go back 5 years.
3 or 5.
Wise County told me 5.
Okay.
So, what is it that they're notified when they, as the title company, hey, here's the deal, you're going from this to this. What is that is it, cause she sent me everything, she
Well, it's
texted me
because
pictures.
they changed the use of the land. So it went from previously being in ag to no longer being in ag.
Right,
And so they're gonna look back at the last, she thought it was 3. They're gonna look back at the last 5 years and they will collect that portion
okay.
for,
And they just collected at closing, but I don't think that, and it wasn't a Keller Williams agent, I don't know who it was, but she bought it from a couple years ago, but she didn't understand that that's how that would work. But she signed something, because she sent me the document, I said, it says right there that you understand that they'll go back
right.
for rollback taxes.
So she is now selling it? Okay.
So she's got to pay him at closing, and she
Right.
understands that, so the title policy on the property doesn't cover that, because she was
After
aware of
that.
it. Well, they don't read everything
Right.
every month when they close, but,
Yeah. And that can be a significant amount.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, that can be a big
Yeah.
chunk.
So is there something that because I'm sure that
It's
when
in
she
the
was signing.
contract.
Okay.
It's in the contract.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the paragraph, but it's in the contract. It talks about rollback taxes
Okay.
and how they're collected and that they're the buyer's responsibility. But yeah, that does stink. So,
Can she negotiate with the tag, no, like to pay in portions, no?
I think they just collected it.
It's collect- yeah, it's a
Which,
collection.
I mean,
yeah.
they understand it now, but I don't think that she fully understood it when she was signing it.
Yeah. That's it. Okay. Anybody else?
You did a great job. This was
Yeah.
super informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are you gonna do it next week too on all the other stuff?
No,
It should be like a continuing thing like every other
Well,
month.
I think we'll do another one, but, next month. Yeah,
Good.
so.
Then if we want to refer something like this, then just your contact information, email or whatever, because, when it's big, I never saw something like this.
Yep. So, anytime you have questions, that's my email address, and then my phone number, I'll give you my phone number too, 817-629-2964. Excuse me. And if y'all ever have questions, don't hesitate to call. I get frustrated, like I said, with people that don't wanna share information or share knowledge, and I'm always able to answer questions. May not always have the answer, but I'll definitely try to help or try to at least get you to the right person that can help. So,
Well, thank you so much for your
you're
time.
very welcome. Thank you for coming.